We have a number of group of 5 teams in play in week 1 taking on Power 5 opponents, but let's start with what has to be the most intriguing power matchup from a group of 5 standpoint, with Boise State taking on UCF. We talk about looking at college football over the past 2 decades, and these would be the 2 programs that would stand most prominently as group of 5 teams that have certainly dealt a blow to the Power 5 and have been national contenders. So this should be quite the spectacle in Orlando.
I remember the day that this game was scheduled, because Boise State was really the team in the BCS era that was a disruptor every year and leading to talks about expansion, maybe implementing a college football playoff, because they had come so close. They finished undefeated in 2009 and did get a share of the national title. And similarly, UCF in the college football playoff era was the disruptor there, which is leading to the expansion talk that we're seeing now. So these are really 2 pivotal programs in college football's history and expanding the playoff and making it more inclusive. And now that we're seeing this playoff expansion, which could have the top 6 ranked conference champions, there are many times over the past 20 years where Boise State and UCF would have qualified for this hypothetical 12-team playoff that we're discussing right now. But this game is going to be electric energy. UCF has one of the best, not just in the group of 5, one of the best atmospheres in college football at the Bounce House. Cincinnati, I remember when they played them for game day in 2018, and Cincinnati started the game with 2 false starts. So when you're coming back from a pandemic and you're going to have that stadium completely packed, probably a blackout with the fans, and everyone jumps, that is going to be an incredible atmosphere on it's Thursday or Friday night, I think, to open ESPN's week 1 coverage. So it's going to be a great atmosphere. You have 2 good quarterbacks in that game, and Dylan Gabriel, who's right up there with the Spencer Rattlers and Sam Howells as one of the best passers in the sport. And then Hank Bachmeier, who's been a pretty good game manager over the last 2 years at Boise State when he's been healthy. He had that Florida State game in his college football debut where he threw over 400 yards, really showed what he's capable of. So this is going to be really a great quarterback battle between just 2 of the Titan programs that have been disruptors over the last 2 decades.
Boise State has quite the non-conference slate with UCF and also BYU and Oklahoma State. So they've really loaded up on the non-conference schedule. But again, this would be the headliner in week 1. You mentioned Bachmeier's made 13 starts. He's been a pretty conservative quarterback. A lot of hype coming into the collegiate game for him. Jack Sears could possibly press him as the USC transfer who came in with 23 of 27 last season and a little bit of time that he got. But I find it interesting that Boise State, we know the Broncos for being prolific offensively, being wide open, but that's not necessarily the team that they field here in 21. In recent years, especially in 2020, a pretty conservative approach and really relying on defense.
Yeah, I mean, they had some really good defense last year, and then they lose a key piece of that in their cornerback, Avery Williams, who was really the team's leader in the past couple of years there. But this Boise State team, that's really how they got through a lot of those Mountain West games. And it kind of collapsed last year in the Mountain West Championship, though, when they faced San Jose State and Nick Starkel and the Spartans were able to throw all over them. But now the Broncos enter a long off season, and I think that they'll be in good shape for this game. I said Boise State managed to come in on the road just a couple years ago against Florida State in a pretty hyped up environment, come back down from 3 possession deficit and take down the Seminoles. And a lot of that had to do with just their defense igniting and creating plays in the second half. And that would just lead to Bachmeier and the offense capitalizing on there. And there's some names I do like on this Boise State defense this year. One in particular is Ezekiel Noah from the linebacker position. I thought he was a pretty good backfield disruptor last year, and I think that he will play a big part in trying to stop UCF's fast-paced offense on week 1. I mean, that's not an easy offense to contain. They go 100 miles an hour with their no huddles and their quick screens to the side, and they really like to expand the field and then take deep shots pretty much every possession. So Boise State's defense is really going to have to step up immediately into the season because it's going to be a tough game. They're going to have a tough non-conference road to start this 2021 season.
Yeah, Boise State could only mount 107 yards rushing per game last year. That was the worst by the program since 1993. They do have 4 offensive linemen coming back, but with a conservative passing attack, not being able to run the football, although they do get George Halani back, who had gained 1,000 yards in 2019 after he was injured and only carried it 19 times last year against a high-flying UCF offense. So you mentioned Dylan Gabriel and set us up for what could be a tremendous season from him after throwing 32 touchdowns in a shortened season. Your thoughts about Gus Malzahn at UCF and whether that marriage is going to work?
I am already on the Gus bus with UCF, and I think every UCF fan is too, because I think they got a little tired of Josh Heupel over the past couple of years, taking the undefeated team that Scott Frost left him the year before. I mean, they went undefeated with Mackenzie Milton in the Heupel's first season before losing that LSU game only by 8 points with a backup quarterback. And then the next year they went 10-3, and they lost some winnable games against Tulsa, Cincinnati, and Pitt. And then last year they went 6-4. That really isn't acceptable with how much talent that the program had in them. In 3 of those 4 losses, they blew double-digit leads: 18 points to Tulsa, 21 points to Memphis, 11 points to Cincinnati, which I'll say that one was a little more excusable considering how great Cincinnati was. But they didn't even show up against BYU in the bowl game last year, and that was really frustrating for the Knight faithful. So Heupel leaving to Tennessee, I think, was one of the better things to happen to this UCF program, because they needed a bit of a refresh this offseason. And the thing that makes me on board with Gus Malzahn so far is how he's done in the transfer portal and in recruiting. You're getting 5 stars to visit UCF's campus. Players that are being recruited by Alabama's, Clemson's, Florida's are stepping foot on the UCF's campus and taking official visits. They've dominated the transfer portal this offseason, getting guys like Auburn defensive end Big Cat Bryant, or they've had a couple wide receivers transfer from Tennessee, Notre Dame, Colorado State. They got Northwestern starting running back Isaiah Bowser, Auburn's running back Mark Anthony Richards. So UCF just dominating the transfer portal this offseason, probably more than any other program did. And just Gus Malzahn's really influence that he's had so far. I think UCF's going to be back this year in terms of competing for a New Year's Six slot.
Yeah, to further your point, you're talking about Tennessee's Brandon Johnson coming in the transfer portal at wide receiver, and Craig Myers, Auburn wide receiver. He comes in. You mentioned a slew of other guys coming in. Jalen Robinson should be taking over again as the number 1 wide receiver after Marlon Williams, one of the best in the nation, moves on. UCF hosting Boise State on opening weekend. Again, the best of the group of 5 over the past couple decades. Steve, do you have an early lean on this one?
This is going to be a tough game to pick. Last year, I would have actually if these teams played last year, I think I just would have picked Boise State. I mean, UCF won all the games that they should have last year, but I never felt like they beat a team that was on par with them. They beat the 6 teams that they were clearly better than, and they lost to the 4 teams that were their level or higher competition. But with a new year, Gus Malzahn, and this game being in the bounce house where UCF won, I don't know the exact number, but I think it was in the 20s in a row before that loss to Cincinnati before the loss to Tulsa last year. It's a hard atmosphere to win, and being a week 1 game, I think the Knights with Dylan Gabriel, the superior quarterback in this battle, I think UCF's offense is going to get this done.